Well, welcome one and all. This is our second last meeting of this financial year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a wee while. There are no registrations for the public forum at all, so we'll just get stuck straight into the actual meeting, starting at number 2, the apologies. And we do have an apology from Councillor O'Malley, who has to disappear at 6:45 this evening to attend another engagement. And with a wee bit of luck, we might be able to all join him at the same time, but we'll just see how we go with that. So I move we accept that apology. Somebody second it?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. All in favour?
No.
Now, confirmation of the agenda. I'm going to move that the agenda is as written with one alteration, and that is, depending on how we go time-wise, we might bring Jim O'Malley's council activities a bit forward so that he can get that done and then leave by the time he has to go. All in favour of that?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll carry it. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any changes at all? I think we had one last meeting, but are you all still the same people you were back then? So it would appear, right? Yes, Mandy.
I did get Rebecca to alter mine to read that I'm the Deputy Chair of Keep New Zealand Beautiful now.
That's been noted,
Right.
and so that's in the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's no amendment.
Right. So I'll just move that we note all that. Somebody second. Thanks, Jim. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. You've had a chance to look at that. And I believe there is one small amendment that needs to be made. Mark, can you?
Yeah, I've got one. It's to do with the report we did on Truby King Recreation Reserve, the committee report there. It reads that Delta have a volunteer group. It should read that Delta have one of their staff deals with volunteer groups that carry out work on areas where that are associated with their contracts.
Right, so they've got a member of their staff liaises with volunteer groups rather than them having a volunteer group. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, on that basis, we'll just move that the minutes of the last meeting are correct, and we agree on that minor amendment. Somebody second that?
Yep.
Thanks, Jim. All in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Good. Now we've got some visitors this evening. I was talking to the Regional Council about the bus services, and I found that they now have a senior communications advisor by the name of Charlotte Flaherty. So I invited Charlotte to come and join us, and I also found that we've got a new transportation manager at the Otago Regional Council by the name of Doug Rogers. So I suggested it'd be nice if both of them came along and said hello and just let us know who they are and what they do. So welcome, people. I think you're about to join us.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm here. I know Doug was definitely planning on joining, so he should also be here soon.
We can see Doug. We can't see you yet. Can you activate your video?
I will. Hold on.
There we are.
Here I am.
Jolly good. Welcome. Nice to see you all.
Thank
Nice
you.
talking to you over the last couple of weeks or so.
Yes.
Who would like to go first? Doug, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, kia ora. Good
You've taken over from Gary Maloney, I understand.
I have, yes. Gary's moved into a slightly different role, and I've come in from the outside.
Good. And
I guess,
how long have you been in the role?
2 whole weeks, yes.
All right, so you're really new in all this. Are you familiar with what's been going on with our bus services in the North Coast?
I have. Yeah, I just came in at the tail end of the Palmerston extension, and you'll be aware of the half price fares coming in at the moment. So it's a big win for the coast, I think.
So this, the half price fares, is that for people who have a $2 fare now come down to $1?
Council were considering it this afternoon, and they did vote to approve, subject to final ratification, but it's definitely going ahead on the 1st of April. We're just getting ready. We've got a few logistical things to sort out with the B card and so on, but it looks like it's all goes, so that's good news.
Right, and that's throughout the whole bus network.
It's for all services that are currently under the transport subsidy.
Right, that's good.
It is.
Very good indeed. And so you've got Julian working for you now.
Yeah, I have Gary and Julian as well, and their teams.
Yeah, that's cool. Any of you got any questions for Doug? I'm going to talk a little bit more about the bus service itself a wee bit later on, but the main thing here was so we could put a face to a name. And
Okay.
what are there other things you do apart from the bus services with this transportation role?
Oh, regional land transport plans. It's a more strategic role than an operational role. My background originally was in road design and transportation planning and traffic engineering. So I used to work quite heavily with the state highway network some years ago. So it's an area that I'm quite familiar with. So the role itself is sort of self-defining in a lot of ways, that we put our teams to task where we're needed.
Good, thank you. Jim?
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Jim.
My question isn't about buses, it is actually about your role and the relationship to the Regional Transport Committee, because I'm the DCC's rep on the RTC. So are you going to be the coordinator now in that activity?
Yes, it'll come through me. I may delegate some functions, but I'll be the point of contact of that.
Cool. Does this signal an up resourcing from the ORC to the Regional Transport Committee?
I couldn't comment on that. I'm not entirely sure. So,
I hope so.
I think our involvement needs to be at an appropriate level. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. That's great. Look forward to seeing you there.
Any other questions specifically for Doug at the moment? We'll move to Charlotte. And Charlotte is the Senior Communications Advisor, I think is your full title. Is that correct?
That is my title. Yep. Do you want a bit of background? I've been at
Yes,
I've been at ORC for 6 weeks, and public transport is a very busy and productive area. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of hard work as well. I worked at DCC for a long time, and I know Graham McCarricker, I know Geraldine, and hello. And I worked in a transport role at DCC, and then I retrained. I did mechanical engineering. So for the last 3 years, I've been working at a consultancy doing water engineering, which was really informative, showed me a lot about how another part of our infrastructure system works. There weren't that many people involved in the calculations and stuff, so it's really good to be back in a space where I can see a lot of people, have a lot of people contact, and get to know what people feel like when they're using our bus transport. Pleased to be invited here, and I enjoyed our conversations last week, Alistair. I think this community seems really activated about buses, really does.
Oh, it was nice talking to you, and thank you for your input into that. There was a thing that came up, last year was a very busy year for submissions. We were submitting to this, that, and the next thing. And in our submission to the Regional Council's long-term plan, and when I was sitting talking to the councillors during a discussion with Andrew Noonan, your chairman, we've known Andrew for many years because he used to do what Jim's doing. And prior to that, he used to do what I'm doing. So we've known Andrew a long time. But there had seemed to be a wee bit of a disconnect between Otago Regional Councillors and community boards as such. And it was suggested that perhaps from time to time, a regional councillor might like to come along to a community board meeting if there was going to be a topic that might be of interest. That's maybe something we can resurrect when we get past all this COVID stuff and we're back into live meetings. So you might just like to take that on board, and it's something we would probably come back to you on if we were looking to bring someone along. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. I don't know the protocols for that. I like the idea of the invitation. I think it's a good idea, but I'm sure there is some protocol around that, so we will have to find that out. But as you said, you'll be in touch to ask that question, so that'll be good.
Yeah, we would do it if we have something on our agenda that relates to something the regional council is looking at, and they will certainly do that. Do you have your hand in the air, Andy?
Pardon?
Were you putting your hand in the air to ask a question then?
No, I wasn't. I was just trying to get something off my arm.
Oh, were you?
I apologise. I'll stop doing that.
Are there any questions for either Charlotte or Doug at the moment before we let them get about their business? So, one more from Jim.
I'm not sure if this is the both of you. I'm not sure if either of you are aware that the councillors from the DCC and the ORC are meeting tomorrow, and basically what will be an opening series of conversations at the councillors' levels about how the two institutions can work together when it comes to public transport. And it's certainly, from my position as chair of infrastructure and with transport being under that committee, it's definitely a big thing for us at the DCC to make sure this coordination gets better. I just hearing what you're saying there, Charlotte, about protocols, and maybe that might be something we raise tomorrow, is exactly how DCC committees, which is effectively what a community board is, can talk to ORC staff when it comes to activities that affect their community.
That's great. Yeah, that would be very good. Can I also, sorry, Jim, moving to another thing, but can I also say hello to Andy, because Andy did some work on cycleways, was looking at developing cycleways throughout the towns north of Dunedin, and I worked with him on some of that, or was alongside for some of that. So hello.
Thanks, Charlotte. Yes, and you'll be interested to know that Mandy from the board is particularly involved in reviving some of those ideas. So hopefully we'll see something out this way at some stage.
Yeah, and Councillor Rachel Elder as well.
Okay, guys. Look, thank you very much for coming along just for this brief time. You can be sure that when you come next time, it'll be a bit longer. We might have something contentious for you. But here, Geraldine wants to say something.
It may not be the right people to ask, but the burning question on all of our lips is when do we get to find out about the weekend bus service and what form it will take?
In about 20 minutes.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Righty-ho. Are we all done? Look, thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Pop back to wherever you are.
Yeah.
We will most certainly be in touch again in the future.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
So now we're going to welcome Jill Brown. Aha, there we are. We can see you. You look like you're on a spacecraft above the planet.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Joe.
It's a beautiful picture of the South Island.
Hello, we can't hear you, Jill.
So you should be able to hear me now?
Can you speak louder or get closer to your microphone?
Okay. This is a beautiful picture.
Very,
of South
very
Island.
faint.
Okay, we'll just turn the.
You just check the volume on your speaker.
Yeah. How's that?
That's better.
There we go.
Now, I understand that you've been seconded into the DCC from Kayanga Ora. So perhaps you could tell us why and what you are about and what you're going to do and how we can help you.
Okay, so last year the Kayanga Ora went through quite a major restructure, and we ended up with a regional director based here, which is something that is going to be very important to be driving local decisions, because previously a lot of KO's work has been being done remotely, and as we all know, remote decisions aren't necessarily don't take on the nuances of what's going on, and people were flying in and flying out. So one of the options that the regional director and Sandy, CEO, decided was that they both had work to do, and that they needed a person to do it, and I'm it. So for KO, what I do inside the council is ensure that they get all of the information that they need, and make sure that if there's conversations happening about an upcoming development, of which there's going to be a lot, that the right people are sitting around the table, and that they can get the right information before they go a long way down the line and discover that something's not possible. For Sandy and for the DCC, I've been given almost free rein to complete a housing plan, and we haven't had we've had the Mayor's Task Force for Housing, which happened in 2019, but since then we haven't had anybody focusing on the entirety of housing in Dunedin, in the Dunedin city area. So my job is to look at the whole range of, and you will see in the information I sent through, the whole continuum of housing, from everybody who has no resilience to housing right through to those who have no issues with resilience for housing, and find out what the issues are, what their concerns are, what we can do better, what we can make faster, how we can help people get into homes. Our own planning people in the DCC have identified that if our population keeps growing, we're going to have some troubles. So they've done some great work on the 2GP to intensify in the centre of the city and in other places. So I'm just sort of feeding on that stuff and trying to hook people up, really. So yeah, I'm that single person.
Thank you very much. Question, anybody? Yes, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Joel. It's good to hear the work you're doing. You said that there's likely to be a lot of upcoming development. What sorts of things might we be expecting?
So Kayanga Ora is expecting to, in the Otago Southland area, to build upwards of 300 homes. They are at this moment creating what's called an area development strategy, where they have employed a contractor. They've got funding to employ a contractor, quite a large national contractor, to do a whole lineup, I guess, or alignment of the work of where they have space to develop, where they should be buying land with future development for infrastructure for the council. At the moment, it's sitting at about 300 homes, just over 300 homes for Otago Southland. I would suggest that probably 2/3 of those would be in the Dunedin space, and they are at this moment open to wherever they build. They obviously, on top of that, they have a huge program of redevelopment, which means they're going to take some of the homes that they have, knock them down, redevelop, but intensify. So it's about aligning all those programs together with our future, with the DCC's future infrastructure developments.
And could I just ask, are there any thoughts that some of those developments will be out in our community board area?
I haven't had that specific conversation with the regional director, but I'm happy to do that and come back to you. I think probably the biggest issue, the biggest issue with any of the smaller communities is the access to services. So KO has a tendency to want to build closer to services, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to build in smaller places. So I'm happy to find that information out for you if you would like me to.
Thank you.
Mark, then Geraldine.
It's sort of a follow on from what Andy was talking about. I just read a report last night. Back in 2009, the regional council, I think it was, did some work in an area, and they identified about 300 building sites that were ready to be, that could be built on as of right in the Blueskin Bay area. For some reason, that doesn't seem to have shown up on any council reports that I've read. But you know, there has been quite a lot of work done there already.
Okay, I'm happy to look into that, and thank you for that. I'm always looking for things to find out.
Thank you.
Geraldine.
Yeah, my question is there particular groups in society that have been identified as having housing needs? I think my question relates back to quite some years ago. The DCC did a survey, and what they found was a high demand for 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, you know, sort of maybe for single people or couples that don't have children or whatever, as opposed to big flash family homes. And I wondered if that's something that you're interested in, that side of things, because a lot of the new builds we see tend to be done by developers and are at the kind of flasher end and on the bigger scale. So I just wonder if there's some work looking at the other end.
We have a lot of, thank you for that. Yes, I agree. We have a really big need for 1 and 2 bedrooms. That's still sitting there. That's still there. Mostly KO, from what I understand, will be looking at building 2s, because 2s are a little bit more flexible. You can underutilize a 2, but you can't overutilize a 1. But that may have changed. The thing that we are finding now with the whole continuum or the pipeline is that we've got gaps along the space. So we've got gaps for people getting into their first home. Their first homes are at this moment relatively unaffordable, and people are struggling. And the lending laws have now changed, so that's made it more difficult. Although you know, most of the economists believe that the housing prices will come back a bit. Some are saying as much as 10%. But then at the other end, we have people who are underutilising homes that are in maybe family homes, generally older people who are in their family homes. They've had their family there, family have grown up and flown the nest, but they don't have the ability to downsize because they can't afford to downsize to the next step, whatever that step is, because there just isn't the stock. I know that Kāinga Ora has been given the instruction to build until building is no longer needed. So they are expecting to build both social housing and down the track some affordable housing. There are affordable housing groups coming into the city. So Habitat for Humanity is one, and they've been given money to develop houses in the city. So there are options coming to look across that thing. But yes, you're right. We are drastically short of 1 and 2 bedroom homes.
Can I just, the DCC has their own stock of one for single people mainly. But that used to have room for people to apply and relatively quickly get a position. Now I believe there's a huge waiting list. So, you know, if you're working with or for the council, I'm wondering if that's something that you're looking at addressing as well.
The council housing, yes, you're right, there is a wait list, and the applications or the process to be accepted into those is in the process of being changed, because it's become unrealistic in the way that, you know, people have been applying for things that possibly didn't need them. The council has been generous and given a percentage of like a 2 million spend per year to up housing in Dunedin, and that will likely go to the providing of more of those sorts of homes for people who are struggling at that other end. We're also working against the DHB's preference for ageing in place. And whilst I'm not advocating not to age in place, there are concerns around that. The statistics show that generally over 65, if you are alone in your home, rather than being in some sort of facility, you're more likely to have trips and falls, and you're less like your well-being and social isolation is profound. And we're also seeing an increase in the number of homeless people at the ages of 55 and over, specifically women. That's a massively growing area. And because they tend to stay with family or couch surf or whatever, they're quite hidden. The latest Australian study says that that's an area of concern that's growing by about 30% a year. And that was only people that they had found rather than what we believe to be the true issue. So there are some real concerns around those older, needing smaller homes on a number of fronts, not just affordability.
Just
Quite
another
depressing.
question relating to that. Are there ways to work with developers to require them to do some affordable housing or smaller size houses or something like that, and with developments that might be catering for a different demographic?
Yeah, I've had a conversation with a number of developers, and a number of them were actually unaware of some of the stuff that is going on. And I don't know whether that is, I think it's just you don't know what you don't know. One of the developers who specialises in townhouses is doing very nicely, and he can't keep up. And so those are generally smaller houses, generally built with a couple in mind, or a professional couple or an older couple in mind. So yeah, the developers have definitely been very receptive to talking to me, and they have been very interested in thinking about how they can increase supply. So, for example, I was talking to one who wanted to who identified that he would be prepared to do some progressive home ownership for some of his buildings, but he didn't know how to go about it. So I've hooked him and a group that does that up so that they can have conversations. So there's been a lot of that sort of work going on. There was another one where I made the comment that had come to me from one of the disability groups, was that we future-proof our houses for technology, but not for people. And his comment was, well, what does that look like? And I said, it looks like 850 wide doors. That's big enough for a pram or a walker or a wheelchair. Doesn't have to. You don't have to have a wet floor shower or anything. You just have to have 850 doors, because the enable funding that you get through the DHB is quite difficult to get and quite time consuming. And you can be, we know of people in Dunedin who are actually currently out of their homes because they're waiting for them to be made accessible for them because their conditions have deteriorated. And he came back to me that day and said, every house I do now is going to have 850 doors. So, there's lots of little things that the developers are really actually quite keen. I've found them to be very positive.
Right.
Thank you. So, Mark, are you waving your hand again?
Yes. Tell me, has any consideration been given to the horrendous costs of that consents at present? Because in some cases I know of where they're actually restricting projects going ahead, because in some areas they're looking at close to 50% of the building just in consent fees.
So they have been brought up with me from a number of groups, disability groups, developers, private builders that I've talked to. That will form part of the work that I do next around what do we need to do to move forward. So at this stage, all I'm doing is gathering information and creating the actual plan. Once the action plan comes in, I would imagine there'll be a stream of work around processes and costs and so on.
Thank you.
but that's me preempting the work, to be fair.
Are there any more questions? I thought I saw an ear scratching from Sonia earlier on, but that was just an ear scratching perhaps. Andy? You're muted. Your microphone is muted, Andy. That's
I'm
better.
unmuted. Yeah, that's right. Probably not. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I see from the information you provided that you're presenting your first report back to Culture and Community Committee. Is there expectation that this is going to go up for public consultation at some stage or public input?
At this stage, the plan is just the plan. So what we're doing is we're creating I've been theming the work that goes back to council and is presented to the CNC on the 5th of April. After that, it comes down to what happens from the information that I have gathered. At this stage, I've spoken to I've probably spoken to 30 or 40 groups, 75 individuals from different areas. So, you know, it's not a surprise. And none of the information will likely be a surprise. There's been a couple of things that have been a little bit like, oh, didn't think of that. So public consultation, that's something for down the track when we get into the implementation phase.
All done, guys. Thank you, Jill. I think you've got quite a big job on your hands there. And as the weeks and months go by, we certainly look forward to hearing from you for anything that's applicable to our area. And once we're back into the mode of having live meetings, it'd be nice to have you come along and we can talk about things in more detail. So thank you for coming along tonight. And
you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks now. Ta-ta. Right. What are we doing, Jim? Number 8 is our funding update, which isn't going to take too long. We have got no applications for funding for this meeting. Our next meeting is the last one in this financial year. That's a meeting that takes place on the 1st of June. I know of 2 and possibly 3 items that will be coming up for next meeting that will probably use up all of our resources that we know of at the moment, but we still put things in the local newspapers asking people to apply for funding if necessary. Mandy.
Wing contacted me a couple of days ago and wanted to get some funding around research in Blueskin Bay. Is she one of the ones you were considering?
Sorry, who was that?
Lucy Wing, Dr. Lucy Wing.
No, I haven't heard from Lucy.
Okay, so she'll be putting in an application for next time as well. She wasn't fast enough this time.
Right, jolly good. That'll be 3 or 4. And we shall see what comes out over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So it's in the Blueskin News, it's in the Power magazine, as always, inviting people to apply. So there's no other updates really to do with funding at the moment. So just move those comments. Somebody second. Thanks, Jim. All in favour? Aye. Aye. Now, number 9, GSO's report. The floor is yours, Rebecca.
Happy to take it as read if there's any questions.
You've got one in there. This is on page 17. But we've got in red the funding no longer required for the music festival. I think that's been confirmed that we're going to.
It's the previous one.
It's part of the funding update.
Yeah, so that's all.
That's
It's
not part
coming.
of my report.
What page?
18 onwards.
Oh, 18, sorry. We're on page 18.
My report starts from 18.
Yeah, the bit about that Waikouaiti Music Festival.
Yeah,
That's
that
an-
was in
that's
the
an item.
funding
That's the
update,
previous one.
which is the previous item you've just passed.
Yeah. So I just made comment on it.
Oh.
Yes. A annual plan. Jim, can you just give us a reminder of what this annual plan is?
So annual plans, they come in between the long-term plans, so they tend to be, they're called exceptions only budgets. Effectively, you decide the annual plan budget and you decide the 10-year plan and then the 2 following annual plans at the 10-year plan cycle. So there's very little that happens in an annual plan that's much deviation away from what's decided in the 10-year plan.
Yep.
So the consultation docket's coming out. I can't remember. Do you remember anything particular in this particular consultation document? No, it's not much.
No, I don't think there's much in our area, but I think we get a chance to speak to it week beginning 23rd of May.
It's community boards get speakers,
Yeah.
they normally do.
Yeah.
And you should always, I think, bottom line, my general rule of thumb to tell anybody is that the 10-year plan consultation starts as soon as the last 10-year plan is written up. So there's nothing wrong with coming to an annual plan consultation with what is effectively a long-term plan submission, which is actually where we always think it should be considered. Yeah.
So in our last 10-year plan, we had things such as sewage upgrades for the various townships and all the rest of it. So if there's anything that you would like us to put forward to this particular one, can you let me know by the 9th of May, which would then give us a couple of weeks to put it together?
April.
Yeah, it's got to be because May's the meetings.
That thing comes out when?
We need to provide feedback between the 31st of March and 22nd of April.
Yeah,
And the hearings start on the 2nd of May.
I thought
So-
the 23rd of May, where's that?
No, that is when the deliberations are scheduled, which is the final part of the annual plan process.
So we get invited along when? We begin 2nd of May?
Yes, so you will need to provide feedback between the 31st and the 22nd of April.
Right, so you've got until the 20-something of April, which is not that far away.
So you got like 3 weeks
Yeah.
upon receiving the documentation, so you should receive the start of it.
When's that coming out?
Should be getting ready to come out any day.
Do you know? When that stuff comes out?
Next Thursday.
Yeah, Grant.
Craig, can you give us anything that you want in there by the following Thursday? And that should get us on top of things. All right.
Do you want to pass a resolution of who is putting it together? And then retrospect the actual thing on the 1st of June of what was submitted?
Yeah, well, I'll put the thing together with any input that we have from all the team. So they want this thing written in and then we come along and speak to it later on. All right. You'll have copies of our original 10-year plan submission that we made. If you haven't or can't find it, then ask us and we'll get you a copy of it.
One of the things probably is relevant is based on your 10-year plan submission, you should be looking for what's in this annual plan that comes off that submission.
I will send around what the 10-year plan submission was from the board.
Oh, no, that's good. You'll do that anyway. Excellent.
You'll see some advertising coming up very shortly with videos on social media and there'll be radio, and so there will be quite a few messages going out there reminding people about the 10-year plan round. So yeah, that kicks off next week.
Right. Thank you for that. The next bit that's in here is just the stuff that council is consulting on, and if you want to look at the district plan changes, they're all in there for you. Roadwork schedules there. The roadwork schedule does not include anything that NCT or is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, right. Heck, we're missing water.
It won't be, that's their territory.
No. Any questions on GSO report? If not, I'll just move that we accept that and we note it. Jim seconding, all in favour? Aye. Aye. Number 10, community plan. You'll recall last meeting, Andy Mackenzie Everett came along and there was a bit of discussion on what was in our community plan under section 5 to do with emergency management. Andy's been a bit busy looking at all community board areas and the greater picture around the whole Otago region, and he's going to put something together for us to have a look at, his suggestion as to what our community plan might say. And as soon as we have a look at that and have a chat about it, we'll flick it out to all of you and you can all have a look. And then if we want to, we can incorporate that into our community plan. Had a couple of chats with Andy over the last couple of weeks, so that's going to be coming up very shortly. I don't think there's anything else in our community plan. Yes, Mark? You're muted. You're muted, Mark.
Sorry. Just while we're on that subject, there was a circular came out that Mandy was involved with the Yorikanui area and fire response. Should that be included in that area?
Oh, in the community plan?
In the emergency response part? Or is it a broad covering of everything rather than particular
Well, I
areas?
think what he's looking to do is put something more definitive and more detailed, because he's finding that the community boards have all got different community plans and different detail on the whole thing. So what he was trying to do is to put something together that is generally accepted for their organisation, but also specific to each area. So certainly no reason why not.
Okay. Could Mandy perhaps give us an update on that Mopanui thing that we received around here, just to put everybody in the picture of what's going on there with that?
Still muted, Mandy.
Sorry, would you like that now?
Yes,
Would you
please.
like that
Yeah,
now?
yeah, just while we're on the topic.
So that was James Knapp from Fire and Emergency New Zealand, and he is the local fire safety advisor. And I think that the plan was to have a public consultation, but because of COVID, no public meeting happened. The alternative was to put flyers in people's letterboxes, and the pamphlet simply read, is Mopanui Maunga an area of significance? Do we want the protections around this? Just some awareness about wildfire risk, and is your household prepared if there was a fire? As you know, I sit on the local advisory committee for Fire and Emergency New Zealand, and as our emergency response group coordinator too, I think that fire at Doctor's Point is a big risk, because we do have one road in and one road out and a large number of residents living on that road. So a little bit is about raising awareness, and a little bit is about feeding back to fire and emergency whether we should have greater year-round permits. So,
Mandy, I didn't get one of those. I don't have a mailbox at my gate. I'm on a PO box.
yes.
I don't know that any PO boxes were done.
No,
if
that's because you're not allowed to put anything in a PO box without New Zealand Post permission. So those flyers, as I said to you, are available at the shop and at the library. There was a big pile of them on the counter, but I think the shop ladies have moved them away. I could email something through to you, but I don't have, it was in the Blueskin News also, Alistair, previous copies of the Blueskin News.
I'm thinking more for other people, apart from myself, who don't have post boxes at the gate and who are on PO boxes.
Yes, I understand. So I advertised on Facebook that they're at the library and they're at the shop, and it was advertised in the Blueskin News too. 400 of them were physically distributed to people's letterboxes also.
Right, well, when we can have a look at all of that, it's maybe something that we can incorporate into this community plan.
Yes, it would. I think it would be good if the community board could put a submission in on that one, because it does affect quite a big area of the Blueskin Bay.
Well, that's certainly something we can look at, and I look forward to seeing a copy of it. Now, just looking at Jim's time, you're still okay?
Oh yeah, I don't please report to.
Right. All done the community plan. Chairperson's report, one or two things. The bus services. It's now confirmed that we will have the weekend services. And broadly, it'll be what we asked for. And you remember we signed off on a rough timetable about 2 years ago. And that's what they're looking at, which is 4 runs on a Saturday and 2 runs on a Sunday. A Friday evening one is still a possibility, but it has not been fully costed yet. Regarding the start of it happening, they were hoping to start it the first week of April, or the end of the first week of April. The business of bus drivers and COVID has come to the fore a little bit, and he doesn't want to advertise the thing starting on a certain date if they can't actually meet that to do with driver availability. But all being well, they're hoping that that can actually start on, that would be Saturday the 7th of April, which is a couple of weeks away. So that's all going to happen. They'll put the timetables out in the normal way in the regional council website. There will be updates put into bus shelters, and there will also be the paper timetables they have. They will be updated to include the new weekend service. So it's been a long, long journey, this, but it looks like we're just about there. How many of you would actually get that bus? Good. You put your hand up, Sonny. Yeah. Question.
No, I just wanted to ask, when will that be confirmed for the 7th of April?
That he couldn't tell. I spoke to him yesterday, and he was unwilling to tell me a guaranteed date. They want it to be that date, but they're having drivers, some of them dropping like flies with COVID at the moment, so he can't guarantee it. So we can't actually, I'll put a thing in your Power magazine and the Blueskin News saying that they hope to do it, but we can't nail it just yet. It'll be as soon as possible. We'll let you know, and then you and Geraldine can put this out, and Mandy, put it out on your Facebook pages as soon as we know about it. All right? Geraldine?
I don't think the 7th is a Saturday, Alistair. I think the 9th is a Saturday.
Pardon?
The 7th is not a Saturday, as far as I am aware. The 9th is
Oh, I tell you what, no, 7th is a May. I'm still in April here. Do beg your pardon. Whatever it is. 9th. Yeah, 9th.
Yeah, well, you need to tell them we need to know in advance, because there's no point running a jolly bus if there's no
They
one.
know that. They're well aware of it. And as soon as we find out, we will let you know, so you can check it all on the Facebook pages, and it'll be in their website. Yes, Mandy?
So then the following weekend would be Easter, and would a new service run on Easter weekend?
I understand so.
Okay.
All right. That's the bus services. Firefighting tanks, they're in and full and ready for the fire brigade to use. And the last thing to happen there is some shrubbery is going to be planted around them, and they are using the expertise of a certain Blueskin Bay horticulturalist to give them some good advice on what to plant around the tanks. And I understand that's going to happen in about 6 or 8 weeks or something like that. But that's up to the people who know about such things. Yes, Mark?
The plants are aside, and I think Delta have been subcontracted to do the work.
Yep.
There's complication with the Warrington one, because they're going to need an archaeologist on site to dig the holes for the plants.
No comment. Right. Thank you for that. General vegetation with the council, you know, there's been a lot of complaints on roads. We've had a biggie for a number of years to do with Orokonui Road and the footpath having basically disappeared and merged into the hedgerow. That has now been basically done. The hedgerow has all been trimmed back. The footpath's been reinstated. There's a bit of a discussion to have yet about the edging to make sure it doesn't wash away in the rain, but that's all happening. So the footpath is there now, and the kiddies can walk there instead of in the middle of the road.
It does appear they've made a very good job of that, Alistair, from what I've seen. So thank you.
There's 2 different entities do it. It's Whitestone Roading look after the vegetation side of things, and South Roads look after all unsealed roads and footpaths, unsealed footpaths too. So that the 2 of them had to get together, and there were some delays in doing that. That's why it took forever, but it's done. And if there are any other vegetation issues, please do let us know. You'll recall at our last meeting, we had a couple of gentlemen along talking about the lookout at Puketaraki. We've done a bit of work since then, looking at what can be done to that area, and we're busy putting together some costings on that so we can present that to Roger Wyeth and Dennis O'Connell and their families to see if they're happy with it. And we're looking at what the dollar numbers are, and then we're looking at where the source of the funds could come from. So we're in the middle of that, and we'll have a bit more detail next meeting. Yes, Mandy.
So at my last Keep Dunedin Beautiful meeting, we voted to replace the Bluey the Whale Welcome to Karatane sign. Keep Dunedin Beautiful would like to fund that, and we'd also offer assistance with pricing of information panels and alternatives to a brass plaque for the information piece.
How much money have you got?
We don't do the information panels, but I can help with costing.
Yeah, the brass plaque it will probably be reinstated. It's very, very good. It's had 30 years of weathering. It's a bit worn and battered, but underneath all the weathering, it's in good condition and it's very, very informative. So we're looking at getting that reinstated as a first stage into this. Yes, Mandy.
So they've removed the plaque
Yes.
temporarily? Okay. And I did think at the meeting, they said they wanted to change where that plaque was and add more information. So maybe
it's on a concrete plinth, and the plinth is actually in the middle of a guy's driveway, it turned out. So that concrete plinth will be going. The information that he spoke of at the last meeting was to make sure that the O'Connell family were recognised, and that committee was recognised from 1990, and that's actually on the plaque. So if the brass plaque is reinstated, that information is already there. And I've spoken to both Roger Wyeth and Dennis O'Connell about it, and they're happy with progress to date. So by the time we have our next meeting, we should be well on the way with this. And it might well be that this could be a community board project as far as some funding goes. Aye, Andy.
my next question is the original artist for Bluey the Whale. I believe they've retired, but do Roger and Dennis have a contact for them, and are they prepared to recreate Bluey, or do we commission?
We can ask that question for you, no problem.
Okay, great.
Anything else on Puketeraki? We've already spoken about that one. Our next meeting's 1st of June, and in view of the announcement of the Prime Minister today around lunchtime, we haven't a clue what's going to be happening. I doubt if Graham even knows yet, but that will all happen over the next couple of weeks, and we'll become more aware as to whether in-person meetings will start up again. So it's been quite a radical change that they announced today. Some of it is a couple of weeks away from being implemented. So we shall find out in the fullness of time. And I'll note my chairperson's report. Somebody second that. Thanks, Chairman. All in favour?
Aye.
Now we're going to jump past number 12 at the moment, and we'll jump on to number 13, which is Jim's report, so that he will be able to get away in time for his little Guinness drink.
No, Guinness, it is with the Irish ambassador, but I don't think there's any drinking.
No Guinness. Anyway, what's happening?
There's very little happening at the moment. I mean, COVID has basically meant that we're doing lots of Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And so I think the only thing actually that I can really think of is actually something that's happening tomorrow, which is the councillor initiative. It's something that Jules Raddick put forward as a motion as in a meeting to arrange meetings between the DCC councillors and the ORC councillors to talk about a governance relationship on public transport. Because we see basically a black hole, basically, where transport has got, with the road controlling authority, we have every other component of transport sitting at this council except for public transport, which sits at the ORC.
Yeah.
There's always been this backwards and forwards about where will the buses sit and other such things, and that does not seem to have ever moved either. So what we're asking is that the councillors are going to basically sit and talk about what we would like to see as an outcome, as how to communicate better. And from a very early preliminary meeting that I was at about a year ago, the conceptual idea would be something like whenever the DCC was doing a workshop with councillors on transport planning that involved public transport, they would invite the ORC councillors to that workshop. And likewise, if there was workshops that the ORC were doing related to public transport, then DCC councillors would come to that workshop. So we're aware of each other's work programs. And then out of that, hopefully will come that when the more integrated planning around public transport itself. So the stuff that you guys have just done should be more integrated within the DCC and ORC.
Yeah, when you're talking about that, this whole business of the buses for the North Coast, it's been a long, long journey to get as far as we've got.
Yes.
One thing that is lacking, and that's a bus service into Warrington. And part of the reason for the lack of that is the fact that Warrington residents are not rated for the bus service. And we don't know whether Warrington residents would like to be rated for that. It's just something to note and let people do know that Warrington is the one gap. Warrington's got an increasing population, and their only option at the moment is a sort of park and ride, drive to Evansdale and jump on the bus. So it's just something to keep in mind that it's one of our communities that is lacking, as is Seacler.
And also the other one of whether the DCC ever contributes. So,
Yes.
so if we're more coordinated, then there's potentially an opportunity to figure out a way. Say that the ORC was not up for it or it wasn't in their funding capacity, the DCC could be involved. I mean, that was what underpinned the switch to $2 fee to start with.
The other thing that you need to look at too is the issue of bus shelters. And we had the kind of ludicrous situation in Waikouaiti where there were no shelters, and we got 3 out of the 4 we requested, but the regional council buy them. They can decide where they go, but the city council has to then do the work to make sure they can actually go in and they print the yellow lines, and it doesn't seem to be well coordinated.
We're having all issue at Port Chalmers right now, identifying the bus stop
Yeah.
on Main Street. So I think that'll be the topic of tomorrow.
Yeah,
Is that where do we identify these issues? And I guess it's basically putting down the gauntlet that it was put out a few years ago, which was if the ORC can make the buses run, then there's no need for the DCC to come and get them. But if it can't, then this might be the starting movement to basically come to, in other words, rationally approaching how we can go through this.
The other thing that we put in our submission about public transport was the fact that the education department are involved in all this as well, the school buses, and the whole thing just seems a real muddle.
And that's because the Department of Education doesn't talk about its provisions.
How can that be rectified?
We'll start tomorrow.
All right, well, good luck. Geraldine.
Just a addition to the bit about Warrington, which sort of fits into what Jim is planning. Not only do we not have a bus, but we do have a footpath between Evansdale and Warrington, which we're very lucky to have. Sometimes not in very good condition, it's right at the moment, but there's no street lighting along there. So the last bus comes very late from town. And even at this time of year, it's probably beginning to be dark for people that are having to walk from Evansdale to Warrington. And it can be kids, because if they want to do anything after school and they don't get that 3:30 bus, the only other option is one that kind of comes through about midnight. Not quite. But anyway, so that's kind of an example, because that comes under DCC, that street lighting thing.
It does.
It's quite a distance just to light up there.
Yeah.
It's very dark. It's very scary.
Well, that's something we want to take on board for a future plan. Let's do it.
Yeah, that might be more of something to keep going into your community.
Yeah, I'm just giving you an example of what DCC does affects also,
Well, my feeling is that, there's a whole career in physics to be talked about the black hole that emerges between two organisations where they touch. There's a space-time continuum thing that just causes weird things. So placing a bus stop, placing bus shelters and designating a bus stop is just unbelievably slow.
Yeah.
So coordinating street lighting with a bus stop I would put it under that same heading. So no, you raised a good point.
Yeah. Oh, just another example you can bring up with them. Not only we need no transport, but we don't have any street lighting.
Enjoy that meeting.
I'm hoping it'll be a useful start to trying to get past what has been just a straight up impasse.
Yeah, you've got a roadblock there. What else you got?
There's nothing much else happening. I mean, the annual plan's coming.
You're still drawing your salary.
Don't worry, I've given that feedback myself. I'm pushing that the committee meetings become bigger again. So having enormous council meetings,
Yeah.
and relatively small committee meetings. But I mean, it does mean that there's fairly large gaps in between. The agenda for the council meeting will come out tomorrow, I guess.
Okay, so no doubt you're going to note that. You'll move that we note your.
If there's not too much going on right now.
I'll second that. In favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right, we can leap into item 12 now. Jim's got 14 minutes to go. And item 12, the board updates. Keep Dunedin beautiful, Mandy, and now you tell us you'll also keep New Zealand beautiful.
Yes, Deputy Chair. So I was the Zone 6 rep and I've just been voted Deputy Chair. Today we had a Zoom workshop meeting about the Do the Right Thing campaign that you'll be aware of. It's 55 years of Be a Tidy Kiwi, and very happy to announce after our awards at the Beehive that the Minister for the Environment gave us $1.3 million for the Waste Minimisation Fund, and that is the Do the Right Thing program. So we've got a technical working group and it's around supporting, educating, creating awareness and expanding on our national litter behaviour program. And also in Dunedin, we're looking at working with One Cup, some collaborations around single cup use coming up. We have our Trees for Babies, which is Mother's Day, our annual event, the first one for this year. I don't think we'll be affected by COVID at all, but we've had a request from Ukrainian family to plant a special peace tree for the Ukraine as part of our Trees for Families. We'll be looking at a special peace tree that I don't know if that'll be planted in the same area because I don't think it's a native. So we're just working with parks and whomever about where that special tree might be planted that day. We've got a couple of mural projects. As I said, we're happy to support the Bluey the Whale replacement sign, and around Portobello there has been a couple of new bus stops created, and you'll know that we've got the wonderful Mr. Noakes murals all the way along the peninsula. So I think the council, Lisa Wilkie, is putting out for artists to contribute for that mural project on the bus stops out there. That's about all at the moment.
Lovely, thank you. Geraldine, Waikouaiti Recycling Project.
Yeah, I'll again ask Andy to chip in if he's got something to say. Things are going swimmingly at the moment. We now have 2 containers, as I mentioned last time, at the tip at Waikouaiti, and Judy, our valiant leader, and some volunteers are there definitely on Sundays, but also on other days. She's been promoting some of one container is a free shop, the other one is things for sale at a very low price. So that's been going quite well, I think. She's been doing, and we have a little office now, which I unfortunately haven't visited yet, at the event centre at Waikouaiti. And the new, our new very part-time person, I don't know, coordinator or whatever, is working from that little office. That's Lisa, who we've met, who was doing also volunteer stuff. She's come to the board and we've met her, so you'll remember Lisa. And she's been doing some good stuff with website and promotional stuff for us. What else is happening? Andy, help me out. Anything else exciting?
Yeah, just I'm glad Jim's still here. Just to do with the green waste. After a long wait, all the material that was piling up there did get chipped. We've had another meeting on site with waste management people. It was a good meeting in the sense that they were appreciative of what we were trying to do. But those who were there, felt that they were still somewhat hesitant about composting on site. So they said quite a few, not negative things, but, oh, you know, it might be a problem with this, that, and the other thing. Generally speaking, we just felt at the moment it's best to put it on the back burner until we actually know about the issuing of contracts, because it seems to us that it's going to be very important to know who's got the contracts and also what's going to be done centrally with green waste before we come back to planning what we're going to do at the Waikouaiti site, if anything. And we also felt that it might be quite useful to have some clear guidance from council at some stage as to how they really imagine the new green waste operation, both centrally and locally, working. Because I think if there was even just some general guidelines, it would make life much easier. But just generally what we were feeling was that we're talking to Waste Management. We don't know necessarily yet whether they're going to get the contract. So until we know that, we're just holding back.
Would it be worthwhile to put a request? The thing is, Waste Management are the contractor, but Waste Environmental Solutions are the council team. And so it's a bit disconcerting to find that you're talking to accounts, you're talking to a contractor who has a fiduciary interest. I'm thinking of Fiona Clements as well and Steph Howard. There's other people around the city who are interested in this whole issue of the green waste and how it'll be processed. Might be that we're at the point now, because the contract development's getting fairly advanced, that we have a workshop of sorts to talk about with Waste Environmental Solutions, to talk about waste minimisation, how this relates to waste minimisation plan and waste futures.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
If we don't, I think what will happen will be that obviously it will end up being an enviro waste or waste management led initiative. And which means you will only have a secondary role to play. It would mean that any community development of these activities would probably.
Yeah, well, Mike Mullins and I, who've been sort of pushing on this side, we really feel that we're operating in a bit of a vacuum here, and we need some clear help and guidance, really. I mean, you know that we've had some unsatisfactory meetings with council staff, but that has been dealt with. So, yeah, we just really need more clear guidance, I think, as to how the council wants us to operate, if they do.
If we were to write a letter from the community board to Waste Environmental Solutions asking on behalf of One Coast, asking for feedback as to where the design is on green waste and waste futures. Would that be a good starting point?
I think so.
Just a comment in there. I was at the meeting Andy was at, and the impression I got from Waste Management was that there were, I think, 3 companies that were competing for the contract for the city for general waste, recycling, and the new food waste contract, or food or green waste, whatever you like to call it, and that was going to come into place halfway through next year, and that it was sort of depended on which contractor won as to how that would evolve, what the way they would treat the food waste, what they would do with it, etc. And the council would be in a position to be choosing between them as to which scenario, cost, etc. they like the look of. So that's where we were kind of left, and we were talking to them, or Andy was, about, you know, would there be a space in that contract for us to be doing some, you know, green waste processing on site.
That letter that Jim suggested, that could lead into that. Just a wee thing, talking to Judy Martin, the 2 containers that are there, the big arch that they want to put over in between them. That's where she's looking for a bit of funding. She'll apply for that next meeting. I think she was waiting for her quotes to come in on that. Mark, you were waving your hand. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've just had some dealings with the Timaru Waste Department recently. And what's happened there is the contract has changed. It's gone from waste management to enviro waste, and everything's getting changed around yet again. And it's a, it's a pretty swish sort of an operation. I think it would be a good idea if the council actually said what was required, and then it would save these expensive changeovers every time a contractor changes.
Well, I think that's why I think writing this letter wouldn't be such a bad thing to do, because it might get to that conversation. I know that Simon Drew has told me that the contracts are supposed to take into account activities of groups like One Coast, but it would be quite good to be told how. And then so you understand exactly how that works. My feeling is that you're not going to be doing curbside pickup, right? So someone's going to get the contract with curbside pickup, and then the question is, where does that go next? And under the proximity principle concepts, if it was done on the North Coast, it could be conceivable that it would go to the Waikouaiti Coast Waikouaiti transfer station, and obviously potentially One Coast could ask to be a contractor for the receipt and processing of that material. So I think it'd be good to get clarity to see what you could, how these contracts can be broken into compartments. And then if they can be, what would an organisation like One Coast be able to do?
Just to reply to Mark. Sorry, can I just reply to Mark? The information we got was that it was actually a very long-term contract with right of renewal that's come up.
I think that the philosophy now will be long-term contracts, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sole contract providing a sole activity. There's potential for community interactions, and I know that that's supposed to be in the design. So I think clarity of where it's in the design would be really good.
Sure. No, it's just Mark was saying changing contractors is a tricky business in this business of, and I'm just saying that I think what I know is that it's actually going to be a very long term.
Just looking at the clock here, Jim's got 3 minutes left. Were you waving your hand, Sonia? No, you didn't earlier on. Jim's got 2.5 minutes left. Anybody want anything from Jim before he toodles off? So we're all done and dusted with the Waikouaiti Recycling Centre. Plantation replanting project, Mark, any update?
Yes, I have got an update. It's gone reasonably well, but looking back over the last 2 planting seasons, because of lockdown, there's sort of been half a planting season lost. So they're talking with Albert at the moment, and I think he's given the nod to do another planting season next year. Unfortunately, Greg Kerr is no longer working for the Ranaka, so I have been trying to get hold of Brendan to get an update from the management side, but he hasn't come back to me as of yet. So I'm not sure who's doing his job. There's a lady, Angelina, who she was involved with Warrington, and she's doing a bit of work with them now, and I suspect she may be taking over Greg's job, but I can't confirm that.
Okay, thanks for that.
Could I just add something about that area? I had a contact from a person concerned about wilding pines just further along from where the replanting's being done, and it's now being confirmed that the removal of wilding pines along there will be done.
Good.
Can I just add there's 30% of the original area that hasn't yet been touched. So I think some of that area may come into where the wildling pines are. I'm not 100% sure on that, but hopefully can get quite a bit of that planted next year. But I think it might be best I have a yarn to Albert and just see exactly what he's saying about that.
Yeah, I went along there and had a wee look. I think it's sparse. There's few places where there are quite a few, but then there's some areas where there's not very much. But I think some of them are actually further along from where the planting is intended to go. But anyway, that works in hand, I'm sure.
Enjoy the Guinness. Thank you very much. Sonia, you waved your hand. Yeah,
I was just going to ask Mark, I've had some feedback and I've been down and have a look at it's quite overgrown through the walkway, the walking track. Is there some maintenance to be started there to clear it? It's like, I don't know what kind of plant it is, or something's overtaken the area.
You're muted, Mark.
Have you seen it lately?
Sorry, not very recently, but there was a bit of growth there, and I just presume that would be part of their maintenance contract, but I don't know. That's where I may have to catch up with Albert to just see where they are, because as I say, I haven't had any feedback from the Renakas.
So, Sonia, when I walked down there just the other day, there were some guys working there doing quite a lot of that kind of work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll go down and have another look. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thanks for that. Cystic funding recipients, nothing new on that one. Truby King, Andy and Mark.
Yeah, Mark should be able to help here. Yeah, we're making progress on membership of the committee, which is good. It's been a bit slow, I'm afraid, but we are getting there. Probably the most important thing to report is that the Botanical Society people have been doing more work on the identification of the significant trees. So that work's going on. That's really important, because until that's really done and updated, well, we need to know that before we know where we're starting to do major clearing work and so on. So we're hopeful that that's actually going to start later in the year, probably in the spring, I suspect. But as far as committee membership is concerned, we had Alec, who was the representative of the Truby King Reserve Committee, the Seacliff Committee, who was on the committee. He has resigned. I've been asking him when they're going to have another committee meeting and when they're going to name who they want to represent them on our management committee, but he hasn't got back to me. So we're still waiting for that. And the other thing is that we have got John Brinkley. Mark was in touch with John Brinkley, and he might want to say a bit more about that. And we're going to have a meeting at the reserve quite soon with him. And the only other thing really is that we're throwing around one or two ideas as to things that we might do in terms of getting more use out of the reserve, and particularly on the recreation side of things. And so really this is just a request to board members, if they've got any thoughts about ways in which the reserve might be used appropriately, of course, that would be really good. And just to bear it in mind, you know, when you're out and about and talking to people, that we'd be keen to hear anybody's thoughts on things that might go on up there. We know, for example, that there have been activities up there in the past which no longer take place. So, you know, I'm talking about approved ones, Geraldine.
Sonia.
Can you tell me, Andy, I went and had a look at a couple of days ago. Is the orchard that's in there, that's part of the Truby King area, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's a community orchard, yeah.
Is it used? I just noted a lot of rotting fruit on the ground. I thought it could be put to better use.
Mark, I leave you to comment.
Well, yeah, I was going to follow up on that. We had a comment, we just talked about it yesterday, I think it was, and I haven't done anything about that. But it's like a lot of these community gardens, they're all very good ideas at the time, and
I
Soon
think-
as a bit
All
of
that
interest
pending.
is lost. Yeah. Just talk about my discussion with John Brinkley. It started because we've got the one of the curators from the Botanic Gardens very interested in being part of our management committee. It'd be good if he could, but he can't at the moment because the council are checking out that there may be conflicts of interest, and I'm not quite sure with being a staff member at the Botanic Gardens and on the Truby King Reserve Committee, what a conflict could be. But however, he can't be official until we get their blessings. So, and also John says that and I have checked it out, it's true that the management report is now online and its final thing.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Monday, local government New Zealand Zone 6.
Hi, so today I sent an email around that there is a free workshop on chairing practice coming up on the 28th of this month. That's relevant for people who are maybe newly elected this triennium or who want some experience chairing on other committees or groups. So share that amongst your networks, that would be wonderful. Tomorrow, I'm doing an online workshop, yet another Zoom meeting where I'm not in Wellington. And we're looking at the governance model to feed back to the Future of Local Government Review Panel. So we're seeking input about community-centred local governance, supporting and enabling decisions to be made close to the community as possible, and people being involved in governance in their place. So things that we do on the community board, you know that I'm a big advocate for localism and how important I believe community boards are. So I'll be really advocating tomorrow for how important I think our roles are going forward and activating our community to make sure that they feel part of governance. Yeah, everything's Zoom meeting.
Kathleen, got a question?
Yeah, I haven't really been following it very closely, but I just wonder if Mandy has any background information on what the government's actually likely to do. Are we going to become extinct as community boards? What's the feeling?
Not in Dunedin. I think after we had our review, the DCC definitely haven't moved at all on our current community board status, but I do believe that some community boards across the nation are in trouble. Yeah, so I think it comes down to local councils though, but here in Dunedin, we're in an unchanged position.
Yeah, I don't mean the short term, I just mean with this government review of local government, the central government's review of local government. Do you have any whispers as to what they might be going to do?
No, I guess that's what the Future of Local Government Review Panel is about. So I will keep you updated.
Right, okay. Cheers, thank you.
I'm leaping into your cycleway update Monday.
Mark's got his hand
Right,
up.
yes,
Mark,
so
So just did you all see a survey that was put out by the fellow in Kerry in the to do with local government, and near the end of that was some ideas of what he thought may happen and options that we would prefer. So it sounded as though he had a bit of inside information.
Thank you. The Monday cycleway update, if any.
yes, so we had a stakeholder meeting about 3 weeks ago on the 1st of March with Hamish Seatoon, Emily, myself, and Neil Campbell, who used to sit on the Railways Southern Branch Manager, and Georgia Ray Flack, representing the Runaka, and then a couple of landowners, Scott's Farm, and also known to many of you, Graham Bennett. And Graham's done a lot of work and research into from Mopanui over the hill, through Potato Point and onwards into the city. I think, Mark, you might have done some of this with Graham a few years ago, and Bobby Brown, the backpacker. So it's very exciting. Hamish has pinpointed a lot of places on the map. We've looked at both the rail corridor and alternative routes that we might take, whether we'd go close to the highway, close to the bayside, etc. And now Hamish will go away because we've got that funding for him to project manage. He's going to go away and actually crunch some numbers and have a good look at possible routes and then come back to us soon. But still, we're prioritising those 2 community connections as our first steps. Waikouaiti to Karatane and Waititi to Warrington, and then onwards connections. So the Coast Road, there are some issues with connecting Karatane and Warrington with the movement of the Coast Road, and also equally issues along the rail corridor. So I'm not sure if we'd look at following the road or going with private land, but the Coast Road connection, because of its gradient, would probably be a heartland ride. And you remember a gentleman came and spoke to us about heartland rides, and the gravel, probably not as accessible as some of our other rides, but those community connections we're wanting to be grade 1 for everybody, smooth, wide, accessible for trikes, pushchairs, your nana on her electric bike, hopefully wheelchairs and prams as well too. So there's no future date for anything, but work has begun on feasibility with Hamish.
Good, thanks very much. Excellent. That's the last of the different board updates. Are there any other things that we are not covering here that you would like to see covered? Mark?
There was just one, the vegetation on the roads. I had a gripe from an agricultural contractor just yesterday. I think it was about the overhang of trees on, what's the road that goes up the hill from Orikanuri? Not Hill Road, what's it? Goes up to the old Orikanuri, up past
View Street?
Yes, View Street. And he's had to cut some branches with his chainsaw because they were hitting the big trucks and tractors and things. So perhaps that can be passed on. And also a carrier from Sawyers Bay was concerned. He was concerned about the safety of the Blueskin Road. With the rain, the branches are hanging down, and he has to drive his big truck out in the middle of the road to avoid them hitting. So perhaps we need to bring that to someone's notice, because it's not an ideal situation.
Yep. Okay.
Well, I've noticed that one too, Alistair.
Yep. So you've got that in your little notepad there, Graham?
I'll follow that one up, yep, for sure.
Yeah, Andrew Lord, we've spoken a lot with Andrew about vegetation things. That wet foliage on Blueskin Road, he might not be fully up to date with, so it might be an idea to give him a yell about that. It would be good. Yes, Andy?
Yeah, there's just one thing. Was I imagining it? But I thought we had agreed that we were going to add an item on the executive summary on civil defence.
Yeah, as opposed to the community plan, you mean?
Well, no, I mean, it's just that I think with the work that both Mandy and Sonia are doing, I just thought it would be useful at each meeting if we're just updated on any issues that they're working on. And I think it would be useful for all of us. I mean, I noticed that there were a few things today, for example, and I think if we just have it as a regular item here, I mean, it might well be that there's nothing much to report, but no harm done.
Yeah, we can put that on. and have Sonia and Mandy as the people. Okay. Right, so we already did Jim, number 13, so the last, what?
Need to move that. Move it.
I got to move it, it's a good movie there. Wasn't it? Right, I will move
Yep.
that we will include
Second,
civil defence. That's been seconded, all in favour?
aye.
Jolly good.
And noting the report.
Yeah, item 14, items for consideration for the next meeting. Anything there that you want to bring up that isn't already under consideration? No, in that case, I will declare that this is the fastest meeting we have ever had, and the meeting is now closed at 7 o'clock. Well done, everybody.
Oh.
Must be beer o'clock now. Yeah.